We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. There's £30,000 in tax-free cash to make 2026 the best year yet. A further £10,000 cash to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £1,000 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. And we'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dordme, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight.
Mine will be a budget for growth, with fairness at its heart, and a budget that supports businesses to create jobs and to innovate.
This morning, Chancellor Rachel Reeves delivered a pre-budget speech full of rhetoric about fairness, opportunity and investing in public services. With high taxes looming to cover excessive spending, questions about accountability and ministerial responsibility cannot be ignored. Is it time for Rachel Reeves, as James Callaghan in 1967, to resign if she breaks her manifesto promises? Also tonight...
China. 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 China.
Sheffield Hallam University is under fire for stopping a professor's human rights research into Uyghur abuses in China. Internal documents suggesting fears over losing lucrative Chinese students and scrutiny from Chinese state security. The work was eventually reinstated, but is adverse foreign pressure quietly eroding our freedom of speech? Plus, Project Fair is back as a top Eurocrat threatens Britain with isolation if we dare to leave the ECHR. With the Conservatives and Reform promising to leave the convention and Labour planning to stay, would departing from the ECHR be taking back control of our laws or reducing our global influence? And a French court has cleared a taxi driver accused of stealing Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy's luggage, ruling there was zero proof he intended to keep it. With conflicted stories and missing cash claims, will we ever know what really happened on that 360-mile Transalpine trip? State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most pugnacious panel, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the journalist and broadcaster, Michael Crick. As always, I want to know your views, mailmog@gbnews.com. But now it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Tatiana Sanchez.
Jacob, thank you very much. The top stories. Rachel Reeves has refused to rule out tax rises, saying she'll make the necessary choices in her budget later this month. It comes amid warnings from the Resolution Foundation that tax rises are inevitable. The OBR is also expected to downgrade its productivity forecast, leaving a £20 billion gap in the public finances. Speaking from Downing Street, the Chancellor said her statement on the 26th of November will focus on fairness and opportunity, but she admitted the world has thrown challenges our way.
Mine will be a budget for growth, with fairness at its heart, and a budget that supports businesses to create jobs and to innovate. As I take my decisions on both tax and spend, I will do what is necessary to protect families from high inflation and interest rates, to protect our public services from a return to austerity, and to ensure that the economy that we hand down to future generations is secure, with debt under control.
Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has hit back, claiming Rachel Reeves' speech proves Labour has given up on living within its means.
Chancellor's speech was one long waffle bomb. A laundry list of excuses. She blamed absolutely everybody else for her own choices, her own decisions, her own failures.
Elsewhere, the BBC has been accused of doctoring a Donald Trump speech to make it appear he encouraged the Capitol Hill riot. An internal memo seen by The Telegraph claims a Panorama episode broadcast a week before the US election completely misled viewers. It showed Mr. Trump urging supporters to fight like hell when he actually said to march peacefully and patriotically. The Telegraph says it'll publish more allegations of the BBC's bias in its Gaza coverage and censorship on transgender issues. The BBC told GB News it doesn't comment on leaked documents, but said all feedback is taken seriously. The brother of the Southport killer said his parents lost control of their son and he feared his younger sibling would kill a member of their family. That's according to a public inquiry. Axel Rudakabana, then 17, killed 3 children at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in July last year. The Southport inquiry heard the attacker's brother Dion Rudakabana told a friend there was a risk of his brother doing something potentially fatal. Dion said his brother reminded him of the sociopathic murderer in the film No Country for Old Men. And Tommy Robinson has been cleared of a terror offence after refusing to give police his phone PIN when stopped at the Channel Tunnel last year. The 42-year-old had been driving to Spain when police demanded access to his iPhone under anti-terror powers. The judge found him not guilty, ruling police acted unlawfully, detaining him under the Terrorism Act. Robinson's defence argued officers targeted him because of his political views, not because of any link to terrorism. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in an hour.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. This morning, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves delivered a speech ahead of her budget on the 26th of November. We heard the usual clichés: fairness, opportunity, investing in public services, cutting debt, improving the NHS. But was it really a warm-up act for abandoning repeated promises not to raise taxes?
Mine will be a budget for growth, with fairness at its heart, and a budget that supports businesses to create jobs and to innovate. As I take my decisions on both tax and spend, I will do what is necessary to protect families from high inflation and interest rates, to protect our public services from a return to austerity, and to ensure that the economy that we hand down to future generations is secure, with debt under control.
But what would this mean in terms of accountability and ministerial responsibility? James Callaghan in 1967 had to devalue the pound, but as he had promised not to, he insisted on resigning and was moved to the Home Office. He understood that in positions of economic trust, responsibility comes first. Similarly, Norman Lamont in 1992 wanted to resign, but John Major refused and kept him in office as a human shield. Callaghan did the right thing. Lord Lamont was effectively used to protect a hopeless Prime Minister.
When my resignation was announced 10 days ago, the reaction of many was that this was a delayed resignation. Of course, I discussed the question further with the Prime Minister subsequently. In all those discussions, he emphasised that he regarded the attacks on me as coded attacks on himself. So I decided that my duty and loyalty was to the Prime Minister and that I should remain in office.
At least the then Prime Minister had the courtesy to stay in the chamber to listen to those statements. Recently, Prime Ministers haven't done that. Anyway, today, the Chancellor is in a comparable position to Callaghan and Lamont. She's overseen excessive public spending, and now the budget appears as if it will require higher taxes to cover it. In these circumstances, it's not enough to point to global events to excuse adverse effects from ministerial decisions and manifesto promises. Ministerial responsibility means accepting that when your department bungles, you carry the can. Rachel Reeves should resign if she feels she has to raise income tax, national insurance, or VAT. Not because of political pressure, not because she's a bad person, but because of the principle of ministerial responsibility. Government acts as a team. If a major policy fails, the minister in charge must be prepared to accept those consequences for the team. Excuses about external circumstances or political necessity cannot replace accountability, as Callaghan so clearly understood. Contrast this with Nigel Farage yesterday, who spoke plainly about economic realities. Fortunately, you've got to be a lip reader to follow what Nigel was saying, but it was very interesting because it was clear messaging on tax, expenditure and which promises are realistic. The clarity that was absent from Rachel Reeves's speech. He even questioned the triple lock. The Chancellor's announcement also raises questions about her adherence to the ministerial code, which states that when Parliament is in session, the most important announcements of government policy should be made in the first instance in Parliament. Now, I am sure that the Speaker was furious this morning when he discovered that it was being made first to the Today programme. Failing to tell the House first by announcing it in Downing Street in a briefing room is a clear breach and ought to be investigated by the Prime Minister's ethics advisor, Sir Laurie Magnus, who now, thanks to Keir Starmer, has the authority to launch his own investigations. If a budget fails to deliver without abandoning manifesto pledges, the Chancellor must take responsibility. Higher taxes, increased debt or wasted spending cannot simply be justified by external factors. Ministerial accountability is not optional. It is fundamental to the integrity of government and the trust the public places in its leaders. As always, let me know what you think. mailmog@gbnews.com. But now it's my most pugnacious panel, Kelvin Mackenzie and Michael Crick. Michael, can you defend Rachel Reeves doing this not to Parliament? You understand how Parliament works. Surely this magnitude of announcement ought to be made.
When you say magnitude of announcement, what did she announce? She just hinted. She didn't say, I am putting up income tax definitely by 2 pence in the pound, or I'm putting up national insurance or whatever. It was all hints and so on. It was a load of guff, that speech. And I regret that I wasted half an hour this afternoon listening to it, knowing that we were going to have to discuss it now. No, I think there are lots of occasions, by the way, where ministers, both of your party and of the Labour Party, have made announcements outside the House of Commons, and I think that's outrageous. Yes. And successive speakers have been very upset about this. I don't think that was an example of that.
I spent the best part of 3 years going to the Speaker most days to apologise for this failing. So it's not one just committed by the Labour Party.
Did you give admonish the ministers
I constantly,
behind the scenes?
Constantly going on at Downing Street, which just didn't understand Parliament or care about it. And I expect that's probably true in this Downing Street. But it's also the hinting the warming up or the softening up.
But that always happens with interviews and articles.
Then why have it in the ministerial code? Why not just get out of the ministerial code?
What does the ministerial code say about making hints?
I read it out, that you've got to make important statements to the Commons.
Well, I don't think it was really an important statement. It was a softening up.
But Michael, otherwise, this is a fantastic defence. The government said it was important, but you're saying it was
I'm saying it wasn't important. That is exactly. You've got it absolutely right. It wasn't important. And I could have written that speech. So could you. And there was nothing.
I'd have written a better speech. But Kelvin, hinting at tax rises. If you've said in your manifesto you will not raise 3 major taxes, and you then do, that is like Callaghan in 67,
Right, we should be having this conversation on the night of November the 26th, because I agree with Michael that actually what was done today was a PR exercise and actually could be done in an interview with the Times or something. Right, the number 10 will be delighted with all this because it attracted all the headlines. And actually, in the end of the day, she said nothing except warming us up for something which will be quite dramatic. And at that moment, then a serious discussion can be had about why this has happened. But look, I hate what Labour are doing to our country. I hate that Chancellor. I hate the Prime Minister. But however, let's be honest about it. Since 2007-8, we have been living beyond our means, and along when we might have recovered, along came COVID, and then that blew us out by another 400 billion. And actually, no matter whether it was the Greens, Corbyn, or the man on the moon running our country is in a deep economic hole. And the problem with it is that although I'd love Reeves to go, and I'm looking forward to Labour falling to literally 10 or 12% in the polls, it's going to be incredible. The Greens will be up at 2022. It's an astonishing political change we're watching of reform kind of character. My problem is this. You get rid of Reeves. Who do we have then? Somebody else facing exactly the same problems who decides that tax and spend is that rich people like Michael are going to have to pay more for their rather nice houses in Clapham.
But I think this is really interesting.
I think you're a lot richer than I am, Kelvin.
This is absolutely fascinating because Nigel Farage was saying that we've got to live within our means. He is the first party leader to be making that so clear and then getting to the logical conclusion that saying
it seems to me, under your logic, Nigel Farage should resign for abandoning the policies of last year and the ridiculous spending plans.
I don't think that follows at all.
Year.
I think if you're not the government, your manifesto falls.
Well, that's true. It is a bit different.
I mean, you and I can try getting back through.
But in Rachel Reeves's case, she would argue, would she not, that we made 2 promises, and actually there's the other one, which is fiscal rectitude and my fiscal rules, which was the rather more personal promise, I think, to her, and she said that was always going to trump anything else, and she would say, therefore, I should be allowed to remain. The other thing that struck me about her speech is how egotistical it was. It was constant. I'm doing this, my this, me that. And if I were her, I'd spread the responsibility out a bit. Now, it may well be that she does decide after the budget that her position is such that she should resign or perhaps take another job, as Callaghan did and as Lamont was offered, if I remember rightly. But the trouble is, there isn't a sort of Roy Jenkins figure like Wilson had in 67 in the wings of probably a more heavyweight Chancellor than Callaghan had been, and also there's far too many resignations of ministers. We need stability in government, and I think there's also an element here of the Conservatives lining up all the top Labour people and trying to bump them off one by one.
Well, I don't think we're trying to bump them off. That would be rather extreme.
Well, not literally.
But I think Kelvin has such a good point that nobody's really willing to face up when in government to the disaster of the public finances, and that we are consistently spending 8% more of GDP than we're getting in income.
Right.
So we can't carry on.
Right, we can't carry on, but we have a government who, even when they tried to chop $5 billion off for some welfare reduction, couldn't get it through. So I noticed that the word that she does like using is tax and spend. So she is actually adopting. She is saying we are going to, and then she talks about austerity, but Does she not understand? Does nobody understand? By the way, the Tories, I mean, what a shocking mob they are. Don't let's get carried away that it's just a Labour issue, right? It's shocking that nobody will ever say, I'm sorry, we're not doing that. The triple lock's got to go. This has got to go. That's got to
Nigel
go.
has
And
shown a bit of
then
leg
we
on that.
are going to have to deal with it.
Unfortunately, we've got to move on, so thank you very much to my panel. In a moment.
China. 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 China.
Sheffield Hallam is under fire for stopping a professor's human rights research into Uyghur abuses in China. The work was reinstated, but is adverse foreign pressure quietly eroding our freedom of speech?
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The Royal British Legion is launching the Poppy Appeal to raise funds to support the armed forces community.
Well, the launch will be held at Frameless, where veterans supported by the RBL will share their stories amid a spectacular, immersive poppy landscape projection.
Well, the appeal will encourage the nation to wear a poppy to send a personal message of thanks to those who serve.
Well, let's talk to our national reporter, Will Godley.
And this is all part of the Royal British Legion's fundraising, this Poppy Appeal, happening from now until Armistice Day on, of course, 11th of November, raising money for the armed forces community. They're hoping to raise £50 million to support the some 7,000 veterans, family members and armed forces. And when you were in Afghanistan, that's when your military career came to an unexpected end, wasn't it? What happened there?
So I was the point man in a foot patrol, and unfortunately I was involved in an explosion which subsequently took my hearing from my left ear, and due to that I was forced to leave the army for medical reasons.
And since then, Jason, you've been supported by the Royal British Legion. What kind of support have they offered for you?
Well, it's a vast array of support, really. It can be financial, you know, mental health. They can signpost you for different various charities and support that, you know, as veterans that we really essentially do need, you know, to rebuild our lives and get to a better point, you know, and be positive in our lives, know that we've got that hand on our shoulder when it's needed.
And I can hear you sounding a little bit emotional talking about it. What kind of a difference has that made, that support, on your life?
Oh, it's massive, you know, you can't really... It's not something you can put into words.
GB News, the People's Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, in case you've forgotten, and we were discussing Rachel Reeves and her announcement this morning, and the mailmoggers have come in. Michael says, we are doomed under this inept government. It has to be the worst in history. Are they purposely trying to destroy our economy? A school kid could tell them that you can't tax a country into prosperity. And Paul says, what did everyone expect? Labour always blows up the economy. History is a wonderful thing. It's just a shame that the public have to pay the price. Well, Sheffield Hallam University is under fire after it temporarily shut down research by Professor Laura Murphy investigating forced labour and abuses against Uyghur Muslims in China. Internal documents later revealed long-running connections that Peking's criticism of her research was damaging the university's recruitment of lucrative Chinese students and even perhaps prompting visits from Chinese state security. which China denies, but of course it does. The university did eventually apologise and reinstate the research. But is this a sign of freedom of speech being eroded by stealth from foreign adversaries? Well, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by the Conservative MP, former leader of the party, and MP for Chingford and Woodford Green, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. Sir Ian, thank you very much for joining me. This seems to me to be a really, really serious story that has got tucked away on page 9 of the newspapers, a university kowtowing to China to the cost of a distinguished professor.
You're all right to think it's a serious story. It is very serious for two very good reasons. First of all, in light of the spy trial that's collapsed deliberately by the government, and also the coming debate about the super embassy, which is due, I think they postponed it now till December. But all of this comes encapsulated in what happened at Sheffield Hallam. Laura Murphy was sanctioned at the same time as I was and others back in 2020. She was sanctioned because the Chinese believed that she had caused all the problems over eventually what happened as the genocide in Xinjiang, and she unearthed a lot of the data. Another man called Professor Zenz did, and we got it out through the Interparliamentary Alliance on China globally. So they were very angry about that. But what they've done over the years, and I think you will know this, you'll remember this, one of the big problems is that they've taken over our universities, as far as I can make out. Most of the Russell Group now are completely reliant on the money that comes from foreign students, which are Chinese students. And Oxford and Cambridge, particularly Cambridge, is in a very bad state over the same thing. And of course, what they're doing is wielding their power. So when she was doing all this research, really breakthrough research, talking to Uyghur people who lived in Xinjiang, who were suffering this terrible genocide, she was getting all of her data correctly, properly balanced, and publishing it. And then suddenly the university turned through and said, you've got to stop. And of course, what we discovered was China said, if you don't stop them, we're going to block off your entrance. And they duly did that. So we are completely open now to China in so many ways. And that's why you're right to say this is important. Because what it does show, it shows who we really are now and what we are in hock to China for.
And it shows an extraordinary spinelessness of Sheffield Hallam University, doesn't it? That surely the Vice-Chancellor and all the people running it should have been backing a researcher who was finding a world-breaking story that something other people didn't know about, rather than supinely giving in to a powerful foreign country.
Well, there you have it. What we were told was this wouldn't matter, didn't matter where the students came from. But the trouble is the Chinese students pay the most money. So many universities in the UK have taken these students because of the money. But they've also brought in Confucius Institutes, which they offer free China teaching and Chinese language. But in fact, they're spies, and they spy on the students. So you can see their way their fingers have got inside all of the thinking of those who need to raise the money to run the universities. And they know very well that a UK university, if you hold back on its cash, it won't be able to operate. You're right, they are completely spineless, and the way they behave towards a seriously celebrated researcher, somebody who believed in freedom of speech and thought that we should be calling out countries like China that practice slave labor and genocide, which they were doing, instead of which they turned on her. And then she had to threaten a legal case before they finally backed down and have said that she can publish the data that she produces for them at the same time. But it does tell you everything you need to know about the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom, I'm afraid, is now in hock to China. And our problem is we must be seen as a very weak link in the Atlantic Alliance.
Indeed. Well, Ian, thank you so much for joining me and for standing up to China personally, which I know hasn't always been easy for you. I'm now joined by my panel, Kelvin Mackenzie and Michael Crick. Kelvin, this is really, really serious, isn't it? And the government has a responsibility to protect institutions from this type of bullying. It seems to do nothing. It seems to be conniving with the general trend.
Well, there's two things I'd like to say. First of all, I thought that Ian Duncan-Smith was simply magnificent there. I mean, I didn't know that Russell Group universities were in the hock to the tune that he spells out. Secondly, second-rate universities, second-grade universities like Hallam, a former technical college, are under the cosh financially. So along comes big old China and says, we'll allow your entire student base to be Chinese and we'll pay you $45,000 a year as distinct from $9,000, they say, thank God for that, because I'm going to get shut down. If you follow academia right now, there are literally thousands of academics and their backup staff being laid off all over the country. I mean, places like Kent have had to merge to even survive, and you're going to see more of that as this kind of muscle from abroad comes in. Look, the truth about the matter is the spotlight is a fantastic thing. And the truth about the matter is that Ian Duncan Smith has been battling this now for, must be the best part of a decade now, almost a lone voice against the dangers of China. I love to see it when we strip out their tech. They are not to be trusted. And unfortunately, we live in a global economic world. And what the trouble with Starmer is he doesn't know what to do. Sometimes he feels like punching. Sometimes he feels like kicking. Sometimes he feels like kissing. And it is pathetic. We should just be strong. We should act in our own interest.
Michael, government's complicity is important, isn't it? Because it isn't showing strength. And it obviously doesn't want, as Kelvin puts it, second-tier universities to go under. So it quite likes the Chinese money coming in, even if that sacrifices academic independence.
Indeed, and 10 years ago, at the in the time when we were talking about this was a golden age of relations between Britain and China, in the Cameron Osborne years, universities were encouraged to get into bed with China and to, I mean, the one crucial area we haven't really discussed is research collaboration. There's so many implications about this relationship, and the whole question of suspicions of the theft of intellectual property, suspicions about potential breaches in security when universities are involved in research pertaining to national security. And people have not really been woken up to this. I mean, and also, when you talk about the students that are coming here, these students are effectively chosen by the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party. And I've been involved in university governance for 12 years, up until recently. And one of the questions I asked, and I asked it again yesterday on Twitter, is there a single Uyghur student at a British university? And nobody's told me yet that there are. There are so many implications in this. And one of the problems also was that the governments, successive governments, didn't put up the fees. And so the universities were, in a way, forced down this avenue.
But are we getting a bit paranoid about China? Isn't there a potential for a sensible relationship?
Well, we're being... I mean, I don't know whether you've seen... what we're seeing, for instance, in the car industry is the influx, a massive, massive influx of Chinese cars, Chinese electric cars. They will dominate 10 years from today, even 5 years today. They will dominate because they bring them in at a price way below anything the Germans could do, the French could do, and laughably, if we could do anything, unfortunately, we don't seem to make cars anymore. So, or our own cars anyway, British cars. So we have a problem. If a car which would normally cost you 45,000, 50,000 is being sold for 33,000 to 35,000, but it's Chinese, what do we say? You're not coming in anymore?
We keep petrol cars, but that is another matter for another day. Because we're very lucky, a spokesman, Sheffield Hallam University said the university's decision to not continue with Professor Laura Murphy's research was taken based on our understanding of a complex set of circumstances at the time, including being unable to secure the necessary professional indemnity insurance. Following a review, we have since approved Professor Murphy's latest research. The decision was not based on commercial interests in China. We wish to make clear our commitment to securing and promoting freedom of speech and academic freedom within the law. We will uphold and robustly defend the academic freedom of our staff in accordance with legislation. But I'm afraid it can't be much for university if it splits its infinitives in public statements. Indeed, in the very first sentence, I should think they'd get a better proofreader, perhaps from China. Thank you to Ian Duncan Smith and indeed my panel. Coming up in just a moment, Project Fear is back as a top bureaucrat threatens Britain with isolation if we dare to leave the ECHR. Would leaving the ECHR be taking back control of our laws or risk our global influence?
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast. If you're looking to escape the autumnal weather in the UK, well, there is also some unsettled weather through the Mediterranean. The focus in the east and the west at the moment, with Greece seeing some heavy showers, particularly towards the south, and even some longer spells of rain. Italy, though, faring well for sunny skies, likewise for the south of France. But we do have this wet and windy weather sweeping through Portugal on Wednesday, into Spain, and then clearing into eastern Spain during Thursday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Certainly been a soggy start to the week and further spells of rain are expected over the next 24 hours. The emphasis shifting north. It stays cloudy, it stays breezy. Further spells of rain moving south to north across the United Kingdom. And as we go into the evening, actually, the wettest of the weather moves from southwest England up through Wales into the Midlands and then eventually ends up across northern England, southern and central Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland. A damp night for many, in other words. It's also a breezy night, but that breeze helping to keep temperatures into the teens, even for the southeast, where in fact it stays dry with clear spells. One exception, northern Scotland, where we've got the clear spells and light winds, and as a result, temperatures dipping into the mid-single figures. So a cooler start here, first thing, but plenty of fine weather for Shetland, Orkney, the far north of the mainland, the Outer Hebrides. The rest of Scotland, though, cloudy and damp with some wet weather moving into the south. Northern Ireland, on and off rain, particularly towards the east, and it's a damp picture for the west of England as well as Wales, but not as wet as Tuesday. The Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast faring well for brightness first thing, and in fact we'll see some sunny spells through the day with it staying mostly dry once again. The breeze from the south continues to import mild air, so temperatures up to 15, 16, even 17 Celsius in places, but it does turn damp once again towards the west of England and Wales by the afternoon with some showery rain in places. For bonfire nights, well, it looks like there'll be some rain in the north, but drier elsewhere with clear spells and mild across the board. And that gets us off to a generally cloudy start on Thursday once again. Areas of cloud here and there, but a drier day for many. England and Wales seeing some sunny spells. Friday, likewise, some sunny spells here and there, but a band of rain will move west to east through the day.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
Because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A top bureaucrat has warned that Britain risks becoming isolated on the world stage if it walks away from the European Convention on Human Rights, reminiscent of the failed Project Fear during the EU referendum. Alain Berset, head of the Council of Europe, said he's ready to discuss reform, which is good of him, as more nation-states realise that the ECHR is outdated and parasitic. The Conservatives and Reform have both promised to leave the Convention, but Labour insists we will stay. Sceptics say leaving would restore control over human rights law. The Convention's backers say Britain would lose influence and allies as illegal migration crises escalate. Well, I'm joined now by the former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Ellwood. Tobias, thank you very much for joining me. Why do we have to take...
Always good to see you.
Well, thank you. Do we need to take any notice of the head of the European Council? Because what purpose does he serve?
Well, let's start from the top of where you and I both agree, and I think many people in Britain would agree. The scale of migration is the biggest concern in Britain. It's now polling above the economy, I understand. And if any government wants to demonstrate that they are able gripping this issue, they must have workable policies and ability to bring these numbers under control. Otherwise, I suspect it will lead to serious civil unrest in Britain. That's where we are today, and that's where you and I think, would agree. The challenge is complex and requires separate but interconnected initiatives, from speeding up the application and screening processes, improving the returns, and that involves the ECHR, of course, and one not talked about enough, but putting the fires out at source, something that we used to do well with our targeted soft power. Sudan is the latest example of that. So yes, the ECHR has caused some delay in the returns, but if you crunch the numbers, since 1980, I understand, about a dozen cases have gone against the UK. So it's being used, I'm afraid, as this clarion call to leave the ECHR. It's going to answer all our woes. It's deeply misleading. It's presented as a solution to all our migration problems. It's a complete myth. It's no silver bullet. It's part of the challenge. Yes. We should upgrade it, absolutely. The idea of running away from it is un-British, given the fact that we helped craft it in the first place. And we've earned our seat at the United Nations Security Council because of our involvement, our status on the international stage. So leaving it would go against all that. There must be a second place we can go to repair it.
I'm not sure you're right about our seat on the UN having anything to do with our views on the ECHR. We got there because we won the war and we set it up, and it was much simpler than that.
Sorry, you've simplified. I've got to cut in there. I've got to cut in there.
It can't be taken away from us.
It's our approach to how we conduct ourselves on the international stage, for which is this an example. You're right, it was after the war. I don't dispute
and we've got it, and they can't take it away from us unless we agree, which would be a mad government that would do that. I mean, this lot might, but no sane government would. To your point on the cases that go against us, we operate, as you know, in a presidential system, so the rulings of the European Court have an effect within the British courts, particularly since we have brought the Human Rights Act into UK law, and they therefore influence, however few cases there have been, the judgments made in our courts, and crucially, the decisions made when every single case is evaluated by the people working for the Home Office. So I think it's quite misleading to say we've only lost 6 cases and therefore it doesn't matter.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't matter at all. And this is where I'm trying to find common ground here, because a lot of this debate, as I stress, has become, let's leave the ECHR and it'll solve our migration problems. I say this carefully, but I have done some testing on this. You and I know the characters in the House of Commons from the debates who understand these issues, like Robert Buckland, for example. There are many that simply parrot the words of the Whip's office to say, let's leave the ECHR because that is now our policy, not understanding Article 3 or Article 8, which actually goes to the core of the challenges here. So I'm saying I agree. It needs to be updated. It has an impact on migration returns, but you're now seeing other nations actually saying exactly what we're saying. We're not in this alone. We've got Germany, Italy, France, and other countries now saying it's out of date. Why don't we lead? Why don't we do what Britain does well in starting to promote the idea that this was written in the 1950s, in a different time, place. It now needs updating because it's actually upsetting not just us, but other nations
the point
as well.
is, the problem is it is being updated by the judges themselves, who view it as a living document, which is a fundamental problem. But we tried renegotiating with the EU, a separate body, but a similar context. That didn't work. I agree with you that leaving isn't a silver bullet. I'm not sure you can
compare. I mean, this is apples and pears here. The EU is a completely different picture.
Hold on. Ken Clarke tried reforming the European Convention. He got absolutely nowhere. So far, the Italians have called for it and nothing has happened. The idea that some foreign bureaucrat can say, oh, yes, I'm open to reform, and that's authoritative, when you were saying earlier, and I think rightly, that this is one of the problems that could lead to disorder if it's mishandled, and yet we can't deal with it until we've got agreement with lots of people who aren't willing to agree. And when our previous efforts at reform have not worked, and when the court over decades has accreted more power to itself. Isn't it just cleaner to get back to our own common law, the idea of sovereignty resting with the King in Parliament, the High Court of Parliament? It's a system that worked for the best part of 1,000 years.
Yeah, but we're not living in the dark ages anymore. It's a very different world. It's a one which we play a role. We play a leading role as well. You understand the legislation better than most members and former members of Parliament. You excel at that, and that was very, very clear. I make it clear that most people do not understand the details of the ECHR. And we've jumped onto this as a bandwagon, as an answer. I'm saying that there are other ways to get to where you and I actually want to get to. You could easily legislate in Parliament to say, we are no longer going to respect Article 3 and Article 8. We're not going to leave the ECHR, but these two aspects of the actual convention, we're no longer going to honour until you update it. That, for me, is the strategy to change the situation, rather than simply run away from it. It's not the British way to run away.
We're out of time. Thank you very much. You'll be interested in a topic that's coming up, because we're talking about protests at MPs' houses, which you had a terrible problem with. Also, a French court has cleared a taxi driver accused of stealing the Deputy Prime Minister Lamy's luggage, ruling there was zero proof he intended to keep it. With conflicted stories and missing claims, will we ever know what happened in the Transalpine 360-mile trip? Thank you very much.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
A French court has cleared a taxi driver accused of stealing Deputy Prime Minister David Lamy's luggage after a judge ruled there was zero proof he intended to keep it. Court found the accounts of events supplied by Mr Lamy and his wife incoherent following a 360-mile taxi journey across the Alps. Mr Mimon returned the luggage within a day, though Mr Lamy claimed money was missing. Will we ever know what really happened? Well, my panel are here. Michael, you'd have thought that the Foreign Secretary, as he then was, would be slightly politer to our French friends rather than using foul language, as has come out in court.
Well, yeah, one would have hoped that, but I suppose he was under a lot of personal pressure at the time, and it was a fraught situation, and quite a few of us come out with things we shouldn't say in those kind of... I mean, I'm sure you don't.
I don't. No, I don't.
I do. I was going to say
you do.
I do. I mean, the whole thing is a complete farce, really.
It's a really odd story, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I must say, this is the first time I've warmed towards David Lammy, to be honest, because when he referred to them as...
we're before 9 o'clock, so careful.
Well, I'm not going to use the actual word, but you wouldn't have to be a genius to think that there was an F word ahead of French. And I've felt like that now for some years.
I expect.
Good line. But the other thing is that the judge has effectively dismissed the evidence of the people. The other thing is that I find absolutely astonishing is that this was a 360-mile...
It's an extraordinary trip to take in a car, isn't it?
Well, it's a taxi.
Yes.
And I don't know about you, I don't mind going on the odd Uber or on the odd black cab. Yeah, fine, great. 360 miles. I can't imagine why he thought this was a good idea. And the other issue I had was who paid for it, right? He was Foreign Secretary at the time. He was travelling across Europe. Was that a bill that went to us?
We don't know, no doubt. If it were paid for the government, it would be by the taxpayer.
I think a bit was paid by the government because he was on government business and then on holiday.
He did, yeah.
And presumably he got a cab because the public transport. It would have started his holiday significantly later, and his family were waiting.
Made a good point. Yeah. The French judge or magistrate, whatever he is, seems to have dismissed all the evidence that's come from Lammy. I mean, you can say, well, they're French and they would. Or you could say, it's quite serious when the Foreign Secretary's evidence doesn't seem to hold up.
Yeah, on the other hand, if he was to say, I believe the Foreign Secretary because he's the Foreign Secretary, that would also be... Maybe he just got fed up and he didn't know which side to believe.
Oh, well, perhaps he was trying to steal the jewels from the Louvre, which they seem to be pretty good at. We have asked the Deputy Prime Minister, Mr Lammy, for a comment, but he's too busy mugging up on the Kings and Queens of England to be able to contact us this afternoon. Political activists in England and Wales could face up to 6 months in durance vile for protesting outside the homes of MPs, peers and councillors, after 96% of MPs reported experiencing intimidation. This is what happened to me in 2018 when a tiny group of far-left activists decided to stand outside my house and whimper.
One simple question. You won't answer the question, will you? Your dad won't answer the question. Your daddy's a totally horrible person.
Go in, don't talk to us now.
Go. Lots of people don't like your daddy, you know that. No, he's probably not told you about that.
Well, he was a rather sad old man, really, and I certainly didn't think he should go to jug. Ministers argue that targeting politicians at their private addresses crosses the line from protest into threat, while critics warn the move risks squeezing the right to dissent. There is concern that the amendment excessively extends police powers. Well, back to my panel. Michael, I think politicians just have to have a little bit of backbone, that the police have lots of powers to stop disorder, but actually that silly old chap outside my house was no threat to anybody.
Well, I don't know who of your family were at home at the time, any of your children, how old they were at the time. It seems to me that tightening up the rules on people's homes is probably justified. And I keep thinking about, we've got to stop deterring people from going into politics. So I think if you can make it harder for people to cause disruption, a little bit harder to people to be disruptive outside your home, that's a good thing. I would say outside your office, I think that would be more fair game.
I just wonder, Kelvin, that we don't want to create a special class of people who are politicians who have higher protections from the law than other people.
There?
All right.
They are already a special class. They're people who say one thing and do another and leave us with the bill. All right.
Okay.
So moving that to one.
All right. Yes.
Moving that to one side. I absolutely believe they should be protected. I do not like the idea of some of these really quite serious demonstrators coming out, Just Stop Oil kind of people, well organised, prepared to throw stuff at your building. I don't like the idea of, not particularly you, but your wife or your family, but also you as well. You should have a sanctuary, I think.
But if
you're not 24 hours a day.
No, absolutely. But if they throw paint on your house...
Yes, they will get done for that.
That's right. They're committing an offence.
The point I'm making is that they are serious-minded people who have a really deep hatred of you, and I feel worried. After all, we've had two We've had 2 murders now of MPs, and I'm sure that if somebody was to give us a briefing now, you'd find out that there would be quite a few politicians that would be on really quite serious danger lists right now. I believe that this is a good piece of legislation and should be applauded.
I don't. You see, I think it is cutting down on people's right to protest. That if you're outside somebody's house peacefully and you've got a banner saying, I mean, it's the same with the exclusion areas around abortion clinics, that peaceful protest oughtn't to be criminalised, and 6 months in prison if you're just standing there. And that man was just standing there. I think it's too much. I don't think it's proportionate.
I think you're, I've got a lot of sympathy with what you say on that, but I think that if an MP's spouse and children are frightened from leaving the home to go to school or go to wherever they want to go because there's a great, I don't want to use the word mob, a large number of protesters out there being noisy with banners and so on. You don't know who might be in the middle of them, somebody who isn't benign.
But what about photographers, if they're outside? Where do you draw the line? Actually, photographers are always very polite when they're outside, but how do you differentiate between the photographer and the protester?
That's your point, wasn't it? They are polite. They view you as a commercial operation. These other people dislike you intensely, and they do not wish you well, and they don't wish your family well. So if your wife or your kids walked through them when you weren't there, they would get a gobload as well. No, I think this is a decent piece of legislation, and if 96% of MPs are worried about it, that's good enough for me.
We want to encourage people to go into politics and not leave it.
Indeed, so we should. Anyway, that's all from me, and I'd encourage you all to go into politics, not necessarily in North East Somerset. Up next, it's Patrick Christie's. Patrick, what's on your programme this evening?
Yes, lovely stuff, Jacob. Great show. Loads on tonight. I mean, Rachel Reeves, incompetent, legally dubious, way out of her depth. What an absolute shocker that was today. And I've got a feeling it could finally be game over for the BBC. Stay tuned.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Certainly been a soggy start to the week, and further spells of rain are expected over the next 24 hours. The emphasis shifting north. It stays cloudy, it stays breezy. Further spells of rain moving south to north across the United Kingdom. And as we go into the evening, actually, the wettest of the weather moves from southwest England up through Wales into the Midlands, and then eventually ends up across northern England, southern and central Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland. A damp night for many, in other words. It's also a breezy night, but that breeze helping to keep temperatures into the teens, even for the southeast, where in fact it stays dry with clear spells. One exception, northern Scotland, where we've got the clear spells and light winds, and as a result, temperatures dipping into the mid-single figures. So a cooler start here, first thing, but plenty of fine weather for Shetland, Orkney, the far north of the mainland, the Outer Hebrides. The rest of Scotland, though, cloudy and damp with some wet weather moving into the south. Northern Ireland, on and off rain, particularly towards the east, and it's a damp picture for the west of England as well as Wales, but not as wet as Tuesday. The Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast faring well for brightness first thing, and in fact we'll see some sunny spells through the day with it staying mostly dry once again. The breeze from the south continues to import mild air, so temperatures up to 15, 16, even 17 Celsius in places, but it does turn damp once again towards the west of England and Wales by the afternoon with some showery rain in places. For bonfire nights, well, it looks like there'll be some rain in the north, but drier elsewhere with clear spells and mild across the board. And that gets us off to a generally cloudy start on Thursday once again. Areas of cloud here and there, but a drier day for many. England and Wales seeing some sunny spells. Friday, likewise, some sunny spells here and there, but a band of rain will move west to east through the day.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
We're
giving you the chance to win your entire Christmas this year paid for by us. First, we'll give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you a further £10,000 cash to spend on all your Christmas presents, even the tree. Christmas lunch, that's on us too, with £1,000 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're
the failure
deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in